Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is October 25th, 2004. Welcome to Native Calgarian. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by this Satu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you for all of my previous donors for showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review help, whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pimp house on social media. And always remember to share things you learn to your network. I'm going to be reading one of those messages today, so I'm super excited to have you all hear that at the end. Oki, naganago, mekoche, chestakom aki, nara daga dekots de. I'm going to say that one more time. Nara dago dekots Nagotine Siku Seredi. Hi, my name is a Red Thunder woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Delaney. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Pincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning many big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. My late great-grandfather is Milo Bewell of Delaney. His daughter, my granny, Alice, she just passed away less than a year and a half ago. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellow-Knives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the Indigenous gender diverse community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gender violence, and land theft. According to the Quality of Life report for 2024 from the Calgary Foundation, life is harder if you're part of a racialized group. 42% of members of a racialized group do not have timely access to culturally appropriate health and well-being services. 40% of members of a racialized group can't find suitable employment, which is up from 31% from last year. I am not a social worker, nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous people, but I do share my journey as a Dene mother navigating this ableist, colonial, racist, sexist world in 2024. As a trauma-informed Dene woman who attempted to run, joined harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at expensive conventions, left my home to travel to those conventions just to vote on incomplete policies that still allow for colonial incarceration, a denial of justice, denial of health services, racism, colonial trauma, genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples. I have work to continue, reports to advocate for, and I attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I think of all of this today, and I hope that we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country called Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm. As a citizen, see your role in reconciliation, but also as a treaty partner. Pride Month should never be 1 month. It's important to understand that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is forced on these lands by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous peoples, as well as honoring the host as a guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in the so called time of reconciliation. Can they be performative? Absolutely. It is important land acknowledgements have meaning. Otherwise, you're creating more harm. I encourage everyone to introduce themselves with an acknowledgement of their ancestors' stories of displacement and how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement. So we as Indigenous peoples know how safe you are to be around. If you won't say your local Indigenous nations' names, won't say your pronouns, won't say your story of origin, won't acknowledge stolen lands, won't acknowledge imposed economic oppression or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my community, my family, and myself, because we face the most colonial violence based on ignorance or worse, willful anti Indigenous biases. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties, and lies taught today in Canadian schools nationally. That's why settlers and those who call themselves a native Calgarians or whatever town you're from, you show me you have no Indigenous 101 understanding. Justin Winty's book Unreconciled explains that perfectly, as do many Indigenous authored books. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would also be a part of a treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation, and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former geomatics drafter, I'd be happy to teach you more, but you'll have to pay me and you'll have to go to nativecalgarian.com for more. So I'm really honored and excited to have a guest with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Well, thank you. Okay, Dante, my name's Jacklyn Peigan. I am from here, Treaty 7. This is my homeland. I've been in Calgary for about 17 plus years now, um, which grew my whole life around it. I pretty much, I guess you can say, like, I've got to experiencing my life from all different angles, meaning that, as a child that has gone through so much trauma in my life, I was able to overcome that and break free of some of the barriers that kind of stood in my way, reaching from domestic violence to coming to Calgary and being able to kind of find my way because, we're not taught that we're poor living in our communities because we're always supporting each other. We're always there for each other. And I always found that connection. Like all my aunties were like my moms to me. They always supported me whenever I needed something. But then the minute that I left the reserve or my community, I really don't like the word reserve because it's not a reservation to something beautiful. So coming from home, I left at a young age and coming to Calgary, I thought I pretty much knew it all, as a young lady, trying to figure out her life. And little did I know, I didn't know nothing. And so coming into the city, it was kind of scary for me because, I had no home to go to. I had nothing to call home. I was just leaving a really stressful last relationship. And so it was a lot of trauma in itself. And then so when I came up to Calgary, I didn't know about banks. I didn't know about how to get by in anything. Like all I knew is the minute that you get money that you would just spend it and that was it. And so that's what I seen with everybody that I knew. And I wanted something better for my life. And so when I did, I end up looking on Google and trying to find different resources because, you try to ask people around you and nobody really gives you the right answers of where to go and who to look for to support or whatever. And it was a hard knock life for myself because, even though I did have family members, it was kind of like more doing everything on my own. Like, you try ask for support and help and, it's there when you need the love and stuff like that. But other than that, it was more like you got to figure it out. And um, so then I found this amazing program which kind of helped me with banking and all that information. And so they kind of matched my savings on that. And so I was able to go through that program and they helped me like in so many ways. And so my goal was just to be I want something better for my family because I had two little girls. And so it was a little scary. And so when I finally found housing, when it was more easier back then than now it is, but yeah, just being able to find that support and being able to reach out for any kind of connections. And we were able to reside in our home, which was just beautiful because we stayed there for 13 plus years. And, all through that life, same thing, like it was through trauma, abuse, and all that, different things that I've overcome. And, I continue to see myself and like, no matter how dark it was, and no matter how much things that I was going through in that moment, I always remember my papa always telling me that no matter how dark things may seem, just always look for that little white light. And no matter how far it may be, you're gonna get to it no matter what. And so I use that throughout my life for everything. And so then I had a choice to make. It was whether, I continue to do what I was doing or get into a program or school because when I first moved up here, my grandmother actually had taken my kids for a few years because I needed to figure out who I was. And in that time, I was just like, I wanted my children beside me. I didn't want somebody else taking care of them. And so, but then I had fallen into the wrong crowd and it wasn't pleasant. And I got into all kinds of things, addiction, drugs, and alcohol. And in those dark moments, I would always see myself and I'd be like, and I'd be looking at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, I'm meant for something more than this. But all my life I was told I was savage, I was nobody, you're not worth it, you're not going to finish school, you can't even get into university, so why even bother? So all my life I believed that and I took it in and I thought like, okay, well maybe this is who I am. And then there was one lady that just kind of gave me her hand and she told me, you know what? You are meant for something better. So let's just go baby steps and go from there. And I was like, okay. And then so if it wasn't for her mentorship, I don't know where I would be to this day, to be honest. Um and then times kind of got hard there. And so I was in addictions probably for about a couple of years. And then I was like, but at the same time, I was sending all my money, everything I can to my children because I still knew that I wanted them back. And, it's not something to be proud of as a parent, but all your life, like, because my mom comes from the 60s scoop and my grandparents are from residential school survivors. And so I was never shown that love in a sense. Like I remember my mom up until the age of 5, like my mom and dad were like the most amazing parents. We did everything together. We played tag and went running around. And then all of a sudden it was like, then all of a sudden that was taken from me. And then coming back home, it was like, why don't they tell me they love me? Like, why don't they show me and why don't they hug me? Why don't they do all these things? So I truly believe that's who we were. And even walking down the street, like I had to pick and choose my battles, going in stores even because they would follow me or they would yell at me or they'll kick me out of the store. It just depended on how I was dressed. And, it was always a struggle and everything. And it was like, wearing those many different hats to try survive in a city that was so big, that was growing, and there was the constant judgments and all the pieces that go along with that. And then I was like, okay. And then one day I was looking myself in the mirror, and I wasn't that person who I believed in, and I was like, you know what, like I deserve more. I deserve more than what I'm given. And so one night I remember I was sitting with my best friend and we were at my place and it was just like some like creator or I still say the upper power. He he whispered to me and he was telling me like, "What are you doing? Go take a look around your house." And I was like, kind of looked around and I was like, "What?" And then so we had this bottle and we were passing it around and everybody was getting more drunk and all this stuff. And here it was like I was drinking myself sober. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna step away for a few minutes. And then I went upstairs and I was taking a look around my house. And I lived there probably about 4 years already, and I had no pictures on the walls. Like, it just looked like it wasn't a home. And, I had people staying with me and this and that, but it just didn't feel complete because I didn't have my children with me.
Mhm.
And then so I finally went back downstairs and I had a little moment there and I looked at everybody and everybody was just like all having fun and games. And I I never said I was never ever gonna do something, but I told myself was that I'm just gonna put this down for a little bit. I don't know what this looks like. So I looked at all my friends and I told them, I was like, I'm just gonna put this down for a little bit. And they all laughed at me, haha, yeah, right, all this. And I was started questioning, was just like, well, they don't believe me either. Maybe I can't do this. And then I was just like, and then I grabbed whatever I had as in my drugs and I put it down too. And I was just like, well, this is going to be the last of my drugs. I don't know when I'm going to pick it up again, but I just know I just need to put it down for now. And I remember my papa was saying too, he's like, you know what, when you put yourself in a negative stance and when you say never, I'm never going to be like my mom or I'm never going to be like this, you're just setting yourself up for failure. He's like, so just take that time that you need to figure it out. And when you do, come back home.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay. So I end up finally showing them all. And I was like, well, I'm going to take my last drink. This is my last drink and put the bottle down. My last cigarette, here you go. I'm going to put it down. My drugs, here you go. I'm going to put, and they all kind of chuckled at me. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to see where it leads to. And so after that, this was September 20th, 2013. And little did I know my life was about to change all within a little time there, but I quit. And it was really hard in the moment because I wasn't sure where I was being led to or what was happening. And all of a sudden, the more that I said no, it was feeling easier for me. And it was just like I felt I felt like I can do this. And then I was like, I need better for my children. I don't want my children to grow up without a mom because I know that feeling all too well. And, even though I had my grandmother there, like she was there, but she wasn't there because she was taking care of so many children and she was always traveling. And I'm so grateful for her because, I don't know where I would be to this day if she wasn't there to give me the advice that I needed. But in those moments, it was a dark time for like that whole month. And then as I was driving home one night, I got the worst call of my life. And it was my grandmother, and she had told me, your mom's gone.
Oh,
And I was like, where did she go? Because she would always like go on these little adventures with her boyfriend. And so I thought she was just going on another little adventure. And she was like, no, your mom's gone. And I was like, okay, well, where'd she go? And they're like, no, she's gone. Like, she's dead. Like, she just had to come out and say it like that. And I was like, what do you mean? And that was the biggest life-changing moment for myself because, you always need your mom, you always need your parents. And it was hard because I was already living such a hard life. And, what more now is that I didn't have a parent. And then my father, he's always been into addictions too. So he wasn't really present. And so I just had my mom and my grandma and my papa.
mhm.
And so after I lost my mom, like I literally felt when she was taking her last breath, like I felt it in my spirit. I knew something was wrong. I was so antsy that day. I didn't know why. I was cleaning my house. I was doing everything I could. And I told my brother, because he was staying with me at the time, I was like, could you please watch my house? I was like, I just need to go for a drive. I don't know what that looks like. And he was just like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Mm.
And then my mom's song kept coming on the playlist that I was all these playlists that I was playing, but I didn't put that song in those lists. So it was like, why do I keep hearing this? And then all of a sudden I was sitting at my cousin's place and we're just outside. I just had finished coming back from visiting with them. And all of a sudden it was just like this most calmest feeling ever. And it was like all of a sudden that feeling of the anxiety and all that, I can't even explain it, but that feeling just like stopped. Like I was back
Mm.
to normal. I didn't feel anxiety. I didn't feel anything. And then her song at that moment just stopped too. And it was just like, well, what's going on? And then by the time I got back to the Northeast, that's when I heard from my grandmother that my mom had passed on. And so losing her was one of the biggest things. We put each other through so many things, but nowadays I always tell people like treat your parents good. You only get one set of parents. And
Mm.
I would give anything to have my babies back. To have my mom back, I mean, you know, and it was hard for me. And so I continued on with my sobriety. And no matter how much I wanted to just pretty much go backwards, I was like, something kept telling me, like, just hold on. And then one night I was sitting there and I was ready to give up my life. And I just was just going to say, that's it. I don't want to deal with this life no more. And I put myself on my knees and I looked outside and it was fully cloudy outside. And I always remember this because it's who I am and who it made me who I am today. And it was cloudy, it was raining, it was ugly weather outside. And I dropped to my knees and I was like, if there's a sign, if there's any sign that my mom's here or you're here or anything, give me that sign.
Mm.
And in the corner there was like some ruckus happening and it was telling me really bad things like, nobody loves you. Just take your life, blah blah blah, this and that. In those moments I could have because I had everything in front of me to do it.
Wow.
And I told myself like, okay, creator, if you're really here, I need to see this sign. Because if you don't show me the sign, I'm not going to be here after today because I know my children are taken care of. I know that they'll be okay. So in those moments, it was it was scary because I kept hearing this thing. But oh my goodness, like just seeing in that moment when I dropped to my knees and I looked outside and I looked up, it was just like the cloud just kind of opened up right where I was sitting and the light just shone right where I was at.
Wow.
I felt the heat, I felt everything, and I felt the love. And also those little chatters in the corner of my room were no longer.
Wow.
And I was sitting there and I had some pills in my hand and I had some
Mm.
drinks in my hand. And I just broke down and started crying. And I was like, thank you. That's all I needed. So I grabbed that stuff, went to the sink, dumped it all in, poured that alcohol down. And I was like, I'm going to continue to fight because I don't know what my reason is, but I'm going to find it. And so a couple months after that, I was still saying no, but in that time, I would clean up my house spotless and I would still find like alcohol, I would still find drugs. All of a sudden, friends wanted to be bringing me alcohol, wanted to do this, all this stuff. And I was like, where were you guys when I was actually in the moments? I was the
Mm.
one supplying everything. I was the one doing everything. I was providing the home, the food, everything. And I kept saying no. And then one time one of my friends had come and she's like, I got something to tell you. And I was like, she's like, it's real kind of bad, but I want to share this with you because I think you should know. And so all those millions of friends I thought I had were actually, they had did a bet to see how long I would last before falling off, knowing the fact that I just lost my mother. So that even gave me more strength to continue on. And when I did that, it started feeling good.
Mhm.
And the more I said no, the more I started seeing more of this little light in the corner that my papa always talks about. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try for school, see if I could get into university and see if I could go that route.
100%.
And sure enough, everything tried to stop me. Oh, you're not going to get into university. Oh, it's like picking your name out of a hat. Like, how many communities are trying to get into school? And the list went on. And I was just like, well, all I can do is try.
Yeah.
And I got in. And I was like, and I got into two different programs, and I was like, well, which one do I choose? Like, I don't know. Like, and my mom was the one that I always went to kind of get that support. And I'm like, Mom, which one do I choose? And I'm like pulling it up to the sky, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And so she's like, and it was just leading me to social work.
Oh, good.
Mhm. And then I went back home and I tried to bring that home, and everybody was like kind of against it because of the negative things that happened within our peoples, right? With
Yeah.
social workers and coming into the home and taking the children out, not just taking them lightly, like
No.
ripping them from their parents.
Yeah.
And so, it was just like, okay, I got this. And so after my mom passed away, I promised her that each year I was going to do something to make her proud, no matter what that looked like. And so for me, it was like go on a hike, climbing a hike at -42 weather with one of my good friends, and everybody talking to us like we're crazy. But I was like, I need to do this. And then halfway up the mountain, I'm like, okay, I can't do this. I can. And she's like, yes, you can. There was a
Mm.
couple of them. So they're like, yes, you can. Let's just go. You got this. And one was rubbing my legs because 2 days prior to that, I actually did a leg workout. Worst decision of my life, because 2 days later, I felt all the pain, and so climbing up a mountain, which made it even worse. And so it's like, what did I get myself into? And I thought, like, my friend, she would cancel on me because it was -42 at that time, and she was like texts me that morning, and I just had taken some Advil, and she was just like, "Are you ready?" I'm all packed, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." So we were going, right? And when we got to the top, it was the most amazing feeling ever. And ever since then, I've been doing something else, like climbing Calgary Tower stairs,
Nice.
going on a solo trip by myself and finding out who I really am and different things each year. And so, um, it, her 11-year just passed by.
Wow.
And in that 11 years was my 11-year sobriety as well.
Mm.
And so each moment had really surpassed. But when I was almost finished university, COVID hit,
Ah,
and it changed my life again for the
yeah.
worse because I lost most of my family. I lost my papa, then I lost my baby brother 3 months after that. Then I lost my older brother 5 months after that. Then I lost my best friend's mom a month after that. And it was just ongoing. And my sister, and then it just continued on.
Yeah.
And I didn't have time to heal. I didn't have time to sit in those emotions because each time I was about to feel something, then all of a sudden somebody else would pass.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. And I was like, okay. And then when it got to my oldest brother, I literally stopped.
Mm.
And I'm so thankful for my hubby because he stood by me through everything. And we've been together 17 years. And in those moments, he was like, you know what? I'm here. And when it got to my older brother, I finally had to like say, I have to stop. So I stopped going to work full time. I was working full time. I was doing volunteering. I was working part time. I was a full time mother. I was going to school full time. Like I just had a bunch of stuff happening. And I just told him, I just need to stop. And I don't know what that looks like, but I hope that whatever it is, that he's going to support me through it. And he was like, take all the time you need. He's like, I'm here. I was like, okay. And then it took me a moment to finally get up again. And I was like, okay, I just need to keep moving. And I was almost finished school, and I was literally just going back for my last semester when my oldest brother, he was like my twin. He held my
Oh,
hand through all the trauma. He held my hand through everything that was dark in my life. And
yeah.
we were just actually just talked the day before, and we're talking about he was coming up to visit me for a couple of weeks because I was trying to go down there, but they wouldn't let anybody outside the community come in,
Mm.
especially from Calgary because of the high rates that was the COVID had hit.
Sure.
So I told him, well, ask grandma, try come up with grandma. And he was like, okay. And we planned all these things. And then also the next day I get the phone call and I'm like, I just talked to him. What do you mean he's gone? And
Yeah.
again, felt the same thing. That morning felt all too real. I woke up, everything seemed so different. My my daughters were coming down before breakfast even, I think before 7 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, oh, I was like, what are you guys doing up? And they're like, oh, we're gonna go have some cereal. And I'm like, huh, okay.
Just an off day.
Yeah, just really off.
Yeah.
And then I kept like gargling and kind of spitting up and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? And I felt that anxiety feeling again. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do stuff. And then my phone rang and I looked down at my phone and I was like, and I seen my grandma, I'm like, I'm gonna take this right now. But then we always told each other, like, if we call twice, it means that it's important. So she called me back twice. I don't even know who I was talking to, but I know I was talking to one of my aunties. And they said, your brother's gone. And I was like, no, he's not. I was like, I literally just talked to him a couple hours ago, last night. And she was like, he's gone. And that totally broke me. And so I finally stopped everything and I took I took a whole year off of everything and I started meeting with elders. I started connecting with the water again. I started bringing myself to the water, sitting in the water, drumming, listening, singing songs to myself. Anything that just could kind of get me back into tune with who I was. And then and then that semester, I was already so far behind because I was like, I might as well just give up. And then in the back of my head, I just hear my papa like, don't quit. Whatever you
Yeah.
do, don't quit.
Mhm.
And, I couldn't even be there for his, uh, to see him because, they had the hospital locked down. We couldn't go
Jeez.
visit. And happened to get sick too. And so when I was coming to see him, I was just healing. But I told him, give me a couple more days and I'll come visit you. And he's like, my girl, I'm not coming home. And he's like, but just know I love you. But whatever happens, I don't want you to quit. Because he knew I was in school and he knew what I was doing. He's
Yeah.
like, you continue on. So I was like, okay. And then I was like, but how do I live without you? Like, I don't understand this. Sorry. And then so yeah, it was tough. And then when my brother passed, it was like another big wake up call for me. And I'm just like, well, I don't know if I should be mad at creator or whatever, but you keep taking all these people that I love so close to me when I'm trying to do everything right. I'm staying sober and I'm doing good
Yeah.
by people. I try to stand by people. I try to help them when I can. Like I do everything right and still you continue to take everybody I love.
Yeah.
And so I grew angry at creator for a little bit. And
I haven't made peace with anger and creator. I haven't.
yeah, it's
So I
it's
respect that. I understand where you're coming from.
yeah, and so the more that I sat on it, I started growing like this emptiness inside me. I just felt like so like there's a piece of me missing and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, no, I'm still not talking to you right now. And then I was like, I'm just gonna continue on doing what I'm doing. And then there was this lady that came to me and she told me, she was like, you know what? When you stop believing in something, you tend to turn cold. You tend to
Mm,
turn hollow.
mm,
She's like, you need something to believe in. So
mm.
it's like, okay, well, I was always growing up around church. I'm going to go back to church. Maybe that will help. So I went back to church. I found a church here in Calgary. It was beautiful. I cried at the altar all the time. And then it changed because they wanted me to have my hair up. They wanted me to not wear makeup. They wanted me to wear skirts all the time and separate from my hubby until we got legally married. And I was like, but creator loves me for who I am. I was like, why do I have to change my appearances and everything? And they're like, said what they had to say. And, I respect it still. Like I respect it because I did a lot of healing in those times. But then I thought to myself, this wasn't for me anymore. And
Yeah.
I needed to find that piece that was missing. So then I started turning toward elders and turning more toward our spirituality. And then I started seeing a different light and a different love that just empowered me in a sense. And I I finished my school and I talked to all my school teachers, all my instructors, and I was like, this is what all happened within this 5-month period, even. And if you'll give me a chance to finish my last semester, I'll try my best to finish. And they're like, okay, we'll just move all your deadlines to all your assignments till the end of the semester, and then we'll go from there. And it will be up to you if you want to finish, but we're rooting for you. So I had so many months behind and I was like, okay, I got this. So I ended up getting all my assignments and I started making a list down and I started check marking each one, starting with the easiest. And then I started working down. And then all of a sudden we finished the semester and I was like, well, I don't even know how that looks. I was like, I'm just gonna take his as is. And all my instructors, they hugged me and they wished me well. And they're like, well, I really hope you pass all your classes. And if not, if so, you're gonna be going on to new things. And I was like, oh, okay. It's just like, and I had no hope. I thought, no, I probably didn't even pass any of my classes, like, because even though I knew I tried hard, I stayed up all night and doing all these things, there was still those little thoughts in the back of my head that said, like,
Yeah.
you weren't good enough and you don't matter and stuff. So I was like, okay,
God,
I'll
I hate
sit,
that voice.
right?
God, I hate that guy.
Like, no. And I'm an overthinker, so it goes in
Yep.
like millions of different directions. So as I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for my results to come in, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then my hubby's like, don't worry. He's like, you got this. And I'm like, no, I don't. And
Is
he's
there
like,
enough
"Oh,
smudge
okay."
on all of
Right?
Blackfoot territory?
He licked. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, all my scores came in, whatever. And I walked away with A pluses. I think I only had one B plus in all my courses. And just because I forgot one assignment, but she couldn't take it because it was already all in. And I was like, I'll take that, whatever, I'll take him. And then so I end up finishing my schooling. And then a few months rolled by, and all of a sudden I went to go check mail one day and I was like, and I was supposed to be going online to read some books to some grade ones, I do believe at that time. They asked me to come on and read some stories. And after I'd finished that, everybody was like, you're just so amazing. I just love your energy and you're just so beautiful. And all these things, all these little people, what they were saying. And I was just like, that just felt like my inner child telling me different. And I was like, well, thank you so much. And I get off my Zoom call and then I go to the mailbox and I open it up and I see this big envelope, whatever. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? So I open it up and it was my graduation hat. And I literally just started bawling. And I was like, this is for you guys. And I held it up. And it's like, I did this.
Right on.
And then I went back home and I put my hat on and my family was all sitting in the living room at that time. And I was like, you guys, and I still have the video recording of that. And I was like, you guys, I did it. And they're like, what did you do? And then they all look back. I was like, look. And they all seen my hat and they're like, yeah. And they all start cheering on, whatever. And they're like, Mom, you did it. You did it. And I was like, through everything, I made it this far.
Mhm.
And so my journey continued on and through all the losses that I have faced each year pretty much I've been facing loss after loss, and people don't talk about the losses that you have when you're alive too.
Yeah.
People don't even talk about when you go home from losing somebody. That's when the reality really sinks in because there's nobody there, and
Mm.
the reality of being able to like really be with yourself and through all the experiences and everything. But through all the dark times in my life, like, it just made me who I am, and the more that I said no, and the more that I started feeling more like who I was meant to be. And then when I had this social work, I was like, "Well, what do I do now? Like, how do I?" But then I always remember, I wish I had somebody to look up to, like
Yeah.
someone like me. And I always wanted somebody like that. And I couldn't, I sat there because we in our social work, we have to see like who are our people, who are the ones that inspired you to be who you are to this day. And the biggest one was my papa because like he
Mm.
was such a multi-talented man. He painted, he sang, he played the drum, he was a
Oh,
carpenter, he
right on.
he was a cowboy, he did everything. And he was a hardball growing up because in school, like he made us run around our area before we jumped on the bus and stuff. And I used to, oh, this guy's such a mean guy, and but then he made me who I am to this day. Like even with my grandmother, she's like, you know, we kind of lost that connection after, all these losses, whatever. And we're still trying to
Yeah.
build it back. But, her coming from residential school, she doesn't see the spirituality side of things because of how negative that era was. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people think that residential school is up until this day. No, it was just an error. It was a portion of that. Then there's 60 scoop, then there's day school, and then the new residential school is the foster care system.
Yep.
And so, I began to see myself in a different light when I seen myself in university, and they're showing us different pictures of all these amazing artists and all these amazing indigenous people across the world. But then there's like, wow, like that's who I could be. Like,
Yeah.
and it just like, if only so many people could see that, like what I seen. And that's why I am always so stressing on my kids is like, just finish school.
Yep.
You don't know how important it is. But right now, where the times is going, we're in different times now. And so we need to educate ourselves
A
and
hundred
be a part
percent.
of that. Yeah. And
Yep.
be the change that this world needs. And so for me to be that change, just to spark something in somebody knows that I did my part. And so coming into this field of line that I'm in now, I'm helping people. I'm
Yeah.
helping youth between 12 to 65 even. And it's just so empowering itself, and seeing the resilience and seeing the strength and seeing the love that is brought within my family. My children know that their mom loves them, their dad loves them.
Yep.
We're same home together. We're working toward goals. There has to be communication within your family, and you have to comprehend to know that communication will work through everything.
Hmm.
And so through everything that I've done, I've taught my children, and I'm still teaching them as many things as I can, things that I wasn't able to take from my parents because I always thought I had, oh, next time,
Yep. No
next time
kidding.
here, right? So now, my son, he's so amazing. He's doing wonders in school. He's getting on the honor roll system. He's going to school every day. He's taken every opportunity to that he can lead to. My girls as well, like everybody. And then we became kinship parents to two of my hubby's sister's kids. They were in
Mm,
foster care system, so we took them in. We have
nice.
them with us. We've had our first one since he was 18 months. He's going to be 7. Our girl, we just got her last July. We fought for 2 years for her with the foster care and that. And things continued to grow, and just seeing the beauty in everything, and striving and not listening to everybody and what they have to say, because if I listened to everybody what they were saying, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And
Yeah.
so being able to make those changes and being able to see those changes happening in my children, and now my son, he is getting this greatest opportunity to be able to travel. Like he's traveling further than any of us could possibly believe, like, I've traveled, but
Honestly,
that's
when I
just
came
been
across your waffle, and I'm like, what? This kid's gonna go where? I'm like, what? Take my
yeah.
money.
Yeah, so I'm like, "Well, could parents come too?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, they just need about 7,000 more on top of what you're already sending." So I'm like, "Okay, never mind." But but for him, he's planning on to going to Paris, Germany, and the Alps. If I'm saying it wrong, don't come for me. Um, but he's going for 2 weeks from March 20th to the 31st. They leave. They're gonna be there exploring, seeing the different cultures that are there. He's gonna see a new light. Like he's the first Indigenous boy in our family to travel across seas. And so that is such a big thing for him. And he's so excited. So I'm like, I really want to get him there. And I'll do anything I can to get him there. So that's where my goal is at right now is I'm doing this waffle. I'm also doing food orders. I'm gonna be putting up some posters. We did I I put a little spiel in my community page and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get that many responses. And then so I left it the day, whatever. And when I came back, it was like yee high, like it was so, and I'm like, whoa, and everybody's like, we'll support, we'll support. And so from the bottle drive, we earned, I think, $500 just from our community. And there was even a lady, she was like, "Oh," she's like, "I used to travel when I was young." She's just like, "I know it's not a lot, but on top of my bottles, I'll give you $100. I really hope you get there." And I'm
Oh,
like, "Thank you."
yeah.
And my son was the one that was collecting all the bottles. He was meeting these people. He was telling them there's his story. He was sharing like how he really wants to go to this place and he'll do any kind of work even. So they're like, okay, well, we'll see what we can. Keep us posted. They're all rooting for him.
Yeah.
And so I've been reaching out to anybody and everybody that I possibly can, putting it on my all my platforms. Um, and yeah, just really trying to make this kind of happen for him. And yeah, deadlines is coming up pretty fast, so we're really hoping that we could come up. I think he has to average between, I think it's 5,700 or 5,782. And then they want him to, for extra funds, because they are only supplying, I think, breakfast and suppers, so lunches, and if he wants to do some spending there. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it's been quite busy for me. I'm trying to make things happen on top of the work I'm doing. I'm trying to save a lot of families here in Calgary as well, and I'm trying to support a lot of families. And, I have to take off my work hat and go home, put on mom hat, and try and make this happen on the side too for him. So
Yeah.
if you know anybody, send them my way.
I know so many Indigenous social workers who do such good work despite the system. And so I have a deep respect for the work you do, let alone as a mom trying to get the things done in the hopes that he can go and live this dream for not, and that's the thing. Like I remember we were kind of talking earlier about creator, what the heck? But it honestly, like when that person said you have to have something to look forward to, I mean, I can't help but look at my child's eyes and know like that's worth living, that's worth everything. I'll keep going. And then to hear your son have this dream, and every time I see Ashley Cullingbull win some new title, I'm like, this is why we do it, right? So that we can watch each other succeed. And at 6 o'clock tonight is this like Indigenous horror movie that I'm going to go see because it's only going to be playing like one day in Calgary, and today's the day. So I'm like, I'm going to go see this movie. Um, I have a lot of hope for the future, and I know how hard the past generation for us to be here right now. So I just hope like seeing your son doing well makes me happy, even though I'm not related to you. I don't know you. I don't know your family. I just know of your family. And I know as a treaty partner on your land, the very least I can do is like platform you and say, hey,
I
I've
think it's fun.
shared this a few times. Did any of you see it? Come on, give her $20, give her $40 if you can. And especially to all the settlers, like I know they'll give me a few donations here and there, and that's lovely. But honestly, my hope is that they'll go, oh, I can get you my bottles, I can get you, you know, an extra $50, and that all of that money can change everything, and he can live this, and we can all be happy
Absolutely.
aunties.
Absolutely. I
Yep.
truly believe that. And, it's, I trust in Creator that He's gonna continue to lead the path that's set out for me and my family. And, I trust that, things are gonna work out and this
Mhm.
trip's gonna happen one way or another.
Right on. I'm so
I
grateful
might
that you
just have to
came.
give up a foot, a hand, who knows, maybe a kidney,
I know, but we do it if it made the difference. I know it.
right?
So, geez. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I so appreciate it. Would you prefer people just email you directly some monies?
Yeah, that'd be great if they could just email. You can find me um on Facebook. It's kind of hard. So my Blackfoot name is actually Elk Teeth Woman. So growing up, I kind of had that name of Elk Woman because my dad gave it to me, and that was through my grandpa. But he said there's a piece of it missing, and he couldn't figure it out. And then just last year, meeting with one of the elders, he knew my grandpa, and he knew that my grandpa had given me that name, which comes from the Sundance, which means leading with the elders. And so he's like, the missing piece that you had was the elk teeth woman. And so on my Facebook, it says Bunadaki Peigan, that means elk woman. And so I tried to get it switched out, but of course Facebook has all these restrictions, won't allow you. So I couldn't do that. But yeah, and then just this past year I was gifted a Cree name, which is Medicine Horsewoman. So
Mm,
um yeah, so it's another powerful name too, and I bring healing through the horses. And so it's amazing how everything's been going out, and you just got to trust the process and continue to see that little white light. And no matter how many mountains you have to climb over or push aside, you're going to get there. And, don't listen to everybody, because if you listen to everybody, like I said, you're never going to get to where you need to be. So
oh,
just trust
love it.
yourself and learn to forgive yourself even
Oh,
for all the mistakes that you have done, because that's our human form. That's
yep.
why we chose to come here, because we come in spirit, and you know we we want that human experience of being able to go through all these things and feel all these feelings, and then when we leave in spirit again to who we were all along. So being able to shed as many light as you can. And, there's already so much hate in this world. So
Yeah.
if people could hate, we could love too.
Yeah.
And so that's just our way of our peoples. And we've been like that from the beginning of time. And, and it's just like, we're always there for one another. So I truly hope to see, and I'm just so grateful for those that already have supported, because without you guys, this hasn't even come. And now we're like almost to the halfway mark of this waffle. So I'm like, come on, guys, there's great prizes. There's a jingle dress, there's moccasins, there's even an order of fry bread, there's gift cards, there's money, $250 cash prize, and there may be even a star blanket coming on deck too. So a lot of great prizes. I think there's six right now, six prizes to be
Amazing.
won. So yeah, fingers crossed, guys.
Fingers crossed, and I'll just keep sharing it too on all my social medias because, to me it
Awesome.
really matters to that he go, but also that you're doing such great work out there right now. You did so much to get to this moment. We want all the kids to succeed. When them succeed, we all succeed. So for me, it matters a lot to talk about that. And then now that people know who you are, next time you have something new, you can come back on and we'll talk about that one. So,
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you
yeah,
so much, Michelle, for having me. I really appreciate it.
so
And I look
honored.
forward to connecting again.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Until next time.
It's always wonderful to hear the actual people of the land doing the good work, doing what they can do to help not just all of Calgary, not just all of Blackfoot territory, not just her community, but her whole family too. So for me, it's very inspiring to talk to Indigenous people and talk again about what it is that we're doing in the world that is very useful, that just doesn't get talked about enough. And to anyone who may be inspired as a treaty partner to consider giving $5, $10, whatever you can afford, help let's get this little guy to Europe to have a whole fun time and see the world so that he can, dream and have aspirations. And, who knows if he has to go to, the Swiss Alps, he may fall in love with some Sami and who knows what'll happen. I probably got that wrong. So I apologize. Ah, anyway, if you're kind of learning a whole lot of things and maybe you didn't know that you didn't know, I have an Indigenous book club. We meet the second Monday of each month, so once a month, but on the second Monday, and it starts at 6:30 Mountain Time. And yeah, we just discuss a book and go through it with an Indigenous lens. We let Indigenous people speak first, so if you're Indigenous and you want to read some books, come join us and tell us your thoughts as you read them, and come learn with us. And I do hope that people who consider joining our book club maybe beforehand read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. There's actually volumes and volumes of information to read. There's volumes of the National Inquiry to read. And so know the calls to justice, as well as the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. That one's a lot shorter. So that's an easier read, but it's a really important read. And if you don't understand those three, when you come to the book club, then maybe we can talk a bit about it. If you're a settler and you haven't read those, please read them. There's also a settlers book club. And then that way, hopefully we can start integrating more Indigenous teachings into your world. I'm very proud of this podcast. We give solutions on cultural safety training, cultural first aid to create that safer space for Indigenous people, people of color, those with disabilities, and to us LGBTQ to speak. According to the 2024 Quality of Life Report from the Calgary Foundation, 87% of members of a racialized group have experienced discrimination based on religion, ethnicity, skin color, culture, language, accent, gender, or sexual orientation, at least some of the time. 50% of Calgarians claim to be committed to anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, if you claim to be part of that 50%, just gave you a whole bunch of resources to consider. Probably should read the Quality of Life Report to help change your mind a bit. Again, back to cultural safety. If you were to Google it, I actually just came across here to help.bc.ca. They have a whole section on what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. I've shared it for years. I want to thank Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of that here to help.bc.ca for putting that together. That is cultural action tools, should help other people. But if you were to just Google, what is Indigenous cultural safety? I'd love to hear some resources that helped you understand Indigenous people and helped you understand reconciliation a little better, or maybe your treaty partnership. Internalized racism and lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks experience by the structure of racism imposed on these lands. If you go to racialequitytools.org, there are resource files available, and give Donna Bevins money too. What is internalized racism is a great resource for folks to learn. So if you are part of a marginalized group, it's really easy to hurt each other. And this is probably the easiest, best way to not hurt each other. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee, afsc.org. They have some great information there as well. If you're in Calgary and you experience racism, you can actually report it at acttoendracism.ca or text at 867-507-3838. anyone who follows me, I really hope that you take the time to watch a YouTube called The Journey of Becoming an Anti-Racism Leader by the City of Calgary. There's a whole committee that talked about that. Sure you see me share a lot of Stop the Stack YYC. I think it's really important to be helping people who are being legally targeted and help them get out of this. And honestly, even if we paid all of their legal bills, we should be paying their mental health bills. So go to Stop the Stack YYC to learn more. Indigenous have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded, no more. Honor our words, honor the treaties. Listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they are cutting violence prevention programs, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, human rights, migrants, right now we just got the news that we are changing how many people we're allowing into the country, which is, it's upsetting to me as a person to know we would rather attack people of color and the education system than look at capitalism and ask, why is it not helping all of the people that are here? Why is it not helping everyone? Why aren't we able to do this? This is ridiculous. So I would lay a lot more blame on capitalism and the governments that constantly perpetuate their crapola. Anyway, side rant. Um, anyway, we should be standing up for all human rights, including migrants, immigrants, refugees, folks with disabilities. Know your vote to parties directly can negatively impact marginalized people. And almost, I've been reading a lot more that marginalized people is a really incorrect term, that we should be almost saying something to the effect that like racist policies causing this oppression, because why are people marginalized? Because that's what the system that they chose. Anyway, demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform, violence prevention, and now the 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Provincially, the Kenney government created 113 pathways to justice. There's a new Premier's Council on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, but we just haven't seen any substantial work done there. Municipally, we have the White Goose Flying Report. All of these reports are available to all Calgarians, so if you don't know them, look them up. Hold your MLAs accountable. Hold your city councilors accountable. You know, our people are experiencing extreme racism in every institution with multiple reports that say the same thing. I shared with a neighbor that we went to a casino. I know this sounds ridiculous for folks who are not from Alberta. Ralph Klein instituted a system that if we as like a community association, a school club, whatever nonprofit organization, if we help out in casinos, we get a portion of the profits of that night. So it's really normalized for, you know, volunteers to work casinos. Anyway, we were doing it for a local community association and our community school. And I was talking about how we were talking about having ADHD, me and this white guy. This white guy, I just said to him, look, the difference between you and I is that like John Wells was having a, you know, emotional dysregulation and now he's dead. Me as an Indigenous person can't have emotional dysregulation in public or I'll die. That's the difference between you and I. Whereas you may actually get help. I mean, they may not, but you know, it's the point that it's my death sentence. So hopefully something like that resonated with him. Hopefully it resonates with folks like yourself that, you know, the system can change, but it's up to you and what you're going to do about it. Demand change from platforms, politicians. They don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism. They have zero business running should be understood by all parties, local politicians, community associations, nonprofit organizations, sports clubs. There are multiple articles on how non-Indigenous Canadians can be allies, not to mention all of the books that I'd talk about. The Calgary Foundation has a great ally toolkit. It's a PDF. You can find it at calgaryfoundation.org. Highly recommend it. You know, we are dealing with the opioid crisis to this day, and it is sad reality. If you listen to our last podcast with Brian Crockett, you know, we talked extensively about Narcan and naloxone kits and how difficult they are for someone like myself, but aren't supposed to be. Anyway, they're easy for you. You know, it's easy to have a couple on you and give away them through your car window when people come and ask for money. A lot of people will take it. Not everybody, but a lot of people will. And then that way, at least you may be saving a life because folks who are experiencing houselessness are not evil people, and they're watching their friends pass from this horrible drug crisis that our governments refuse to invest beds. They refuse to invest in solutions. And then we have the general public trying to fight safe consumption sites rather than just encouraging investment. For all of you conservatives out there, just, you know, it's fiscally responsible to invest in mental health and health services than it is to allow people to be houseless. Like I just can't believe that we have chosen these policies and claim to do it in fiscal responsibility when it's not. It actually has shown time and time again in study and report after report that it is more fiscally responsible to invest into your government. So when you hear people say cut, 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 high chance that they actually are costing us more in the long run. And I would argue all of the cuts that we did in the 90s is why we have so much houselessness now, which is what we're paying hand over fist and struggling with so many doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals being unable to handle the crisis that we have. So the very minimum, everyone should have a Narcan and naloxone kit for like you'd have a Band-Aid in any first aid kit. That was one thing that was nice. That fellow I was telling you about, you know, he has like a ridiculous emergency kit in his vehicle and was trying to be a firefighter and you know, it just didn't work out for him and he ended up being a different tradesperson and it was good for him. But at the end of the day, like I can't believe I have to explain this to people and people not understand the gravity of helping people with addictions and voting for people who are going to invest in mental health. Anyway, with the cold coming up, it's October 5th. Like I can't stress this enough. We need places to put people. Otherwise, we are sentencing people to death. They are going to freeze to death. They're going to have amputations, and it is completely preventable. And any, you know, city councilor that thinks it's acceptable to take doors off a friggin' bus shelter, you know, I hope, I don't know how you sleep at night knowing people froze to death and that most of the people that are dying are disproportionately Indigenous because of that land theft and because of the, you know, systemic poverty that our country has just grown accustomed to. So don't pretend you didn't know. Um, we have lots of data to talk about the drug crisis that we're facing. I like to encourage people to follow Ewan Thompson. He has been on the show before. He gives out great information on that. If you just go onto Twitter and look at hashtag harm reduction, you would find amazing advocates that care about everybody and these issues. Ultimately, we've had over 10,000 deaths in Alberta alone since 2016. So if you know or if you are using substances, do not use alone. If you are using alone, you can contact the National Overdose Response Service at 888-688-NORS for support. Create a safety plan. You can also download the Brave or Doors app. There's also a lifeguard app. I strongly support Freedom's Path Recovery Society.ca, where you can donate. They provide free one-on-one addictions counseling services, group treatment for recovery in Calgary, are queer-friendly and anti-racist, and it's not in a church. Best part about it, as many of you heard, I also fully support Canada's first 2S LGBTQ addiction recovery centre, stonewallrecovery.ca. Actually, I'm going to be getting my gear, heard from Stephen. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today, want to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness Helpline at 855-242-3310. Again, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also text at hopeforwellness.ca. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can call 844-413-6649. There's a 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta, ssisa.ca. The Indian Residential School Survivor and Family Hotline is 866-925-4419. I'm just going to give a shout out to my American friends that President Joe Biden, he did an apology apparently today. I haven't seen the news yet and I haven't watched it, but I know that's a heavy day for you all. And I want you to know I'm thinking about you. And actually, that's part of my husband's story as well, is the American Indian boarding school. So, we'll be finding out more what's going to happen with that now, or if it's just an apology for an apology. I hope not. Just very difficult with it's an election days away, really, and people are already advanced voting. If you're in Canada, the Kids Help Phone is 1-800-668-6868. You can also text at 686868. They actually have a live chat from 7 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. The Native Youth Crisis Hotline is 877-209-1266. The LGBT Youth Line is no longer exists for phone, but you can text at 647-694-4275, or you can go to youthline.ca to find out for more. For non-Indigenous, there's almost always distress center lines in your area, usually a functioning 211. There's a new national number of 988. You can also text 988, or you can go to 988.ca. The following are 2S LGBTQ crisis supports available in most places in Canada. Just want to give a shout out to the number 2, spirits.org, for their great pilot that they're doing in Toronto. Lucky Ducks. Jeez. For my American friends who have Two-Spirit identity, you can go to strongheartshelpline.org. You can also call 844-7-NATIVE or 844-762-8433. itgetsbettercanada.org has tons of resources for 2S LGBTQ. Just a warning for the QT BIPOC. I've seen some of the organizations listed in Alberta. Not all of them practice anti-racism or have Indigenous education. So trying the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit line may be a better alternative. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. This is self-care, how I take my power back. That's why I started the podcast, to speak freely without interruption, without home police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions. Many people don't want to hear our opinions. They want to tell us they're ignorant ones, usually by people who know nothing about Indigenous, colonialism, constant surveillance of our people, our protests, our vigils, and our rights. I and many others share information on racism daily, so it's just unacceptable. Learn about being trauma informed. People like me are dealing with internalized racism. There's gatekeepers that survive off the status quo. People who are really in their trauma. And now we have these new pretend Indians, and it's just a concept I can't wrap my head around. But I did do a whole podcast on when I was accused of being a pretend Indian. So if you want to listen to that, please do. Internal, external racism is an everyday reality for me and other, folks that have been purposely marginalized through policies. But I do want to say masicho to my ancestors, to my granny, to my mama, what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt. I I want to thank my stepmom for teaching me about her proud Austrian culture and family. I also want to say thank you to my husband, Darcy. He produces and edits the show, and on top of being my husband, he's my childhood friend. He's the father of our child, and he's the support down my journey of the Red Road, witnessing decades of racism and gendered violence. And our child, we are blessed to learn from you daily and honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. And just like I said earlier in the podcast, you give me hope. I hope that my family will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these present day issues. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name of Blackfoot. Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my spirit name of Satu Dene. Humblest apologies to the elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to the previous donors for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, I say thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com. Send in your comments or your questions. I also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. Last thing I want to do is like a touch grass moment. And I got this wonderful email this morning that I wanted to read to everybody because, it filled my heart. And it was feedback from one of my previous ones that I had done about the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, where I just said September 30th was racist. And this email says, your opening was fabulous. Saying who you are, where you're from, and being on uninvited lands. It was great. And then you talked about pay. Yes, we should be paid. The best was talking about boundaries. Yes! How dare we as Native and women at that have the nerve to say no to white gaze? And then you talked about truth and reconciliation, which to me is another lie, but I've lived through the Royal Commission and the many other reports. I am 68, so I may be gone soon, but you have made me proud. I live in Upper Canada, and I use that term because the businesses here refuse Treaty 6 treaty cards and can. Your rage is real, and I see it and I support it. I wish I was paid what Caucasians got so that I could support you now with pay. There's so much we need to address. Why, when a Black man dies in another country, Canadians will take to the streets. But when thousands of Indigenous women die, we are the only ones on the streets yelling. Among our own, why do we accept an Italian singer who wears every stereotype signet Buffy and steals money from our children enough to buy a ranch in Hawaii? Yes, Pie Pop claims her, then Pie Pop should pay for her, not the other First Nations. Yet, as Indigenous women, we judge those among our relations by if they are dark enough, if they are a stereotype. I taught at 8 universities, and I would point out, why aren't all Europeans blonde and blue-eyed? So why do we expect all North Americans to fit the mold created by the colonizer? Even the buffalo are black, brown, blonde, and white. But we don't think that they are less buffalo. Ha ha! Okay, Cookham will get off the soapbox. I thank you because you inspire me. So that was wonderful to read. And of course, I want to end every podcast with side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish as a hair person. And my beautiful cousin once responded, or you'd be in my dish. Thanks, folks, for listening.